Welcome back to the class on international business communication. Today we will talk about, we've been talking about different things. We've talked about the modes of communication, we've talked about channels, we've talked about the different types of communication. Today we will talk about relational communication. We started with interpersonal communication 2 sessions ago, and again, you know, like I told you earlier, I've told you several times, these different stages of communication are really not sequential. They are constantly happening with each other. So we've covered a little bit in interpersonal communication in the workplace. Today we will start with relational communication, which is slightly different in the sense that it is more overarching. Now when we talk about interpersonal communication is something we do on a daily basis, and the aspects that we discussed last time specifically dealt with superior subordinate communication, which is an essential part of any job, which is an essential part of any professional activity. That is a relationship that you need to have whether you like it or not. So the dynamics in such a relationship are very different. Now when we talk about relational communication, we are specifically talking about communication that we have the option of not having with another person. This is the kinds of relationships we form in and through the manner in which we communicate with our peers, with our co-workers, with our teammates, and some of it is compulsory, but how we decide where we are, how we decide which direction the relationship goes in, how we decide what we expect from each other varies from situation to situation and person to person. So let's get into it. As usual, the first part is revision. I would really like you to reflect on your own experiences as a newcomer in a professional situation. What happened the first time you went into a new situation? What really happened? So discuss those experiences and then tell me how you, or discuss amongst yourselves how you learnt your way around, what were the new things, what kinds of signals you sent out into the environment, what did you, who helped you, who did not help you, who you felt comfortable around, who you did not feel comfortable around, all of that. How did you learn, how did you learn to deal with the newness of the situation that you found yourself in. And we had discussed some socialization techniques in professional environment. So which kind of socialization technique were you, did your superiors use to induct you into the organization? How did they help you become a part of the organization? Which socialization technique did you feel most comfortable with and why? And how did intercultural, personality, socio-economic, experiential, educational, gender similarities and differences aid in or prevent your socialization and assimilation in a new organization? And new organization could be anything: school, college, workplace, etc. So how did these differences, these and similarities help you or prevent your socialization and assimilation in this new organization? Now this is very, very important. We are talking about international business communication, which is what most of you, I hope, will be doing. The world is small, if you're not doing it already. The world is small. We are constantly interacting with our peers living on different parts of the planet, and that is why this whole training, this whole sensitivity to the differences and similarities in our environment becomes very, very important. Okay, now let's get into relational communication. What constitutes human relationships? When we talk about relationships, and again we'll discuss this theory in greater detail, but I thought it will be useful to mention some parts or the main postulates of this theory, and we'll discuss this later. Any relationship, any human relationship includes inclusion. Inclusion means becoming a part of the other person's personal sphere, which gives us a sense of belonging. I belong to a team, I belong to the office, I'm a part of the office, I'm a faculty at IIT, I was a student at Home Science College, Chandigarh. So, so all those things. So, I am included. I am an Indian. I am a woman. It is inclusion into that group. Okay. Control of our own life and our ability to influence people we connect to. So, how much control do I have? How much autonomy do I have by virtue of being in this relationship? Where does my limit end and somebody else's start? How much control do I have over those limits? How much can I do within my own sphere? And that defines human relationships, affection towards others, and the desire to be loved by others. Now you'll say, how does this apply in a professional situation? In a professional situation, this would translate into being liked by others. I like people that I work with, and I would like to be liked by people I work with. So that is affection. It doesn't necessarily have to be warmth. It doesn't necessarily have to be hugging and gossiping and chatting over a cup of tea. But just the fact that the people you spend 8, 10, 12 hours of your day with like being around you, and you like being around them. So this is what any human relationship means. Okay. Some assumptions we make while trying to establish relationships, and again this has come up from different theories. The first one, we'll discuss some of these in the slides that follow. The first assumption we make is we cannot not communicate. And of course, when I talk about presentations and how to design presentations, you'll say your own slides are so badly made. The reason is that I put on so much information on these slides just to give you an idea, just to make things clearer. So I'm sorry for the information overload on the slides, but anyway, we cannot not communicate is an assumption we make while trying to establish relationships, which means that a message we send out to a significant other, to the person we are directed towards, to a person we are facing, warrants and will elicit some feedback from the receiver of the message. If you are in my environment, and unless you are desperately, deliberately trying to avoid me, if I say something under normal circumstances, you will respond either by saying, please don't disturb me, I'm busy, or you will say, excuse me. So you'll say, I'm busy, please don't disturb me, or you'll say, yes, what is it? Or you'll be warmer towards me. But any message we send out to the significant other will warrant and will elicit. I mean, I expect you to communicate. I expect you to give me some feedback if I am talking to you. And by and large, in most situations, you will give me some sort of feedback, either positive or negative. That is the first assumption we make while trying to establish relationships. And of course, if the feedback is negative or neutral, then we don't go any further than this. The second assumption is we can often explain and predict another person's behavior, which means if I am establishing a relationship, I know I don't randomly pick out somebody to form a relationship with. I identify somebody. I find somebody in the environment. There's lots of things, lots of people in the environment, and I decide that I must go and talk to this person. Something from the environment sends me a stimulus that helps me establish some sort of, at least perceive a reason for common ground, a reason for any further exchange of information, a reason for any further interaction. So once I have that, then I feel that, okay, based on what I know about the situation, based on what I know about colleagues in this environment, based on what I know about students in a new college, based on what I know about other people, based on what I know about my seniors, I should be able to predict how this person will react if I talk to them. For example, you go to a new office, you go to a new college, you see somebody with grey hair holding books in his hand, walking down the corridor. So what do? One, the person is senior in age, so the person will not say hello to you first. But if you say hello, the person will respond because the person is mature enough. The second thing is, person has white hair, is carrying a stack of books. You are in a college, most probably the person is a professor. So you will say good morning sir or good morning ma'am, and you expect that since you are new, obviously it probably must be a time when new students are coming in, or in a college where there are thousands of students. Many times professors don't remember the name of each and every student they've taught, but still, if it's a new face, whatever the case may be, a youngster in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt means that it's a student. Or anyone who says hello to you, you'll just respond by saying hello. Or you walk up to a person and say good morning sir, and the person looks at you and does this, which means I've acknowledged you, I'm thinking about something, please don't disturb me. Or the person will say good morning. If the person walks by without even acknowledging, what will you think? Either the person is deaf, hasn't heard you, or you will think that the person is too snooty or snobbish or arrogant. Same thing in your work environment. Formally dressed people walking up and down the corridor, what do? You don't go and stand at attention every time a person walks by. People are busy, they don't have the time for these formalities, so what will you do? You'll just smile. Hi, hi. And what do you expect in return? Hi, or a smile and a nod. Very basic thing, which means they have to communicate, and you can predict another person's behavior. Unless it's a person you know closely, the person will at least nod. Okay. The better we know a person, the easier it is to predict his or her behavior. Now, looking at the professional situation once again. You are walking down the corridor, somebody walks past you, your boss, and you say good morning sir, and you know that the boss is very particular about deadlines. So you are expecting the boss to ask you about how your work is going, or whether you have finished a particular piece of work or not. If it is a friend at work, you could be expecting the person to ask you about your personal life. How are you? How are your wife and kids? How are your husband and kids? How is that training program that you were involved in? Or what time should we get together for lunch, or a cup of tea, or a smoke? So all of those things, depending on how closely you know a person, how involved you are in a relationship, you feel that you can predict his or her behavior. The rules and norms of our relationships are constituted in and through communication, and these rules and norms increase and become more explicit as the relationship matures. A violation of these rules and norms adversely affects the quality and strength of our relationships. I want you to mull over this. I want you to think about this in light of what we discussed about rules, and how, after the first time you have gone through the motions, you have become aware of different rules, how this satisfaction with the rules keeps feeding into the further redefinition of the rules, and in different situations, and that's pretty much what this is about. And we will discuss more. I'll keep referring to it in the slides to come. Okay. Typical pattern of relationships. We have the initiating phase, or the initial phase, or the starting phase, where we identify a person we want to establish a relationship with. We start communicating with the person, and based on the feedback from the person, the relationship is formed, then it's maintained, and then it becomes too involved, it starts declining, it may die, and depending on the lessons we have learned, we initiate future relationships. And what does all this rest on? What this class is all about? Communication. How do we know a relationship has started? How do we know a relationship is moving on? How do we know a relationship is growing? How do we know that a relationship is stable? How do we know it has started declining, decaying? And how do we know it's dead? Everything revolves around communication. Everything revolves around the quality and the quantity of interaction we have. Okay. Theories explaining various stages of relationships. Various theories, especially intercultural. In the intercultural scenario, there's a theory by Berger and Calabrese, there's one by DeVito, there's one by Knapp and Evangelisti, there's Chen's model, And I've mentioned these, the last one I mentioned here is elders in the family and at work. We talked about the contextuality of cultures. We will discuss something that is called ethno-methodology. Believe me, all these theories have come out of normal life. Some of us have tried to study what normal life is all about, and then we define normal, and then we come up with rules. And how do we know that these rules exist? How does a child learn to speak? How does a child learn what is right and what is wrong? It is the elders in the family, it is the significant others in the environment that are constantly giving you inputs, that are constantly helping you regulate your behavior. So I'm sorry if some senior theorists disagree, but I come from a culture where we respect our environment. And I'm not saying other cultures don't. We feel that we do not exist without the environment that we are a part of. And I feel it is my responsibility as an academician, as a researcher, to give due credit to people that I've learnt from, and to educate my students about these things in their environments. Everything cannot be explained by theories for two reasons. One, no social scientist can stake a claim to having studied each and every theory that exists. Two, no social scientist can tell you for sure how many theories exist in the social sciences and how many more are coming up. Because human communication, human behavior are constantly evolving, and we are constantly learning based on our experience, based on what we've learned from our culture, based on what we've been taught by the elders, based on what we have been taught by our teachers and parents and family and friends, and what we learn on our own, and our dispositions, and what we eat, and how we feel about our environments. So all these things come together and we are learning, and all this is affecting how we form our relationships, and based on how we communicate, based on the signals we are sending into the environment. No researcher, no behavioral scientist can claim to predict anyone's behavior 100%. There is always a margin of error. And I really like to focus on that 5 to 10% margin of error that exists. Why are things constantly evolving? Because change is always going on. And that is why I say elders in the family at work. They are giving you a piece of their mind, which I believe has a lot of merit to it, in addition to these theories. Due regard to people who spend their lives studying communication, I am one of them. But again, there's lots more outside the purview of what we have studied. Again, some stages of relationships, as in Gamble and Gamble. The first one is initiating, which we talked about last time. The second stage is experimenting, then intensifying, integrating, bonding, differentiating, circumscribing, avoiding, stagnating, and termination. And all of this revolves, is communicated, is affected by a context. All of this is based on perceptions. All of this is communicated in and through the rules by which we communicate. Let's go through these stages one by one. Okay, development and analysis of relationships as proposed by Gamble and Gamble. Again, all of this is based on number of theories that have been referred to by Gamble and Gamble in their book titled Communication Works. So this is from there. Okay. The first stage is initiating, which is the icebreakers, the signals that impel us to initiate a conversation or tell us that we have nothing to gain by interacting, what we see in our environment, what we send out, how we decide whether to start the relationship, how to start the relationship, all of this. And we've dealt with a significant part of it in the previous session on interpersonal communication. Okay. The second stage is experimenting. You send out signals, signals are taken, signals are accepted, positive feedback comes, we start probing the unknown. Again, the quality of conversations is casual and lacking in depth. The main function of this stage, as proposed by Knapp 1992 in Gamble and Gamble 2002, are: one, the experimenting stage provides a process for uncovering, integrating topics and openings for more penetrating conversations. It gives us an idea of what more we can talk about, what are the possible avenues for establishing a common comfort zone. The second function here is that it can serve as audition for a future friendship or a way to increase the scope of a current friendship. Again, widening the comfort zone, possible avenues for widening the common comfort zone. Okay, establishing or widening the already existing comfort zone. It provides a safe procedure for indicating who we are and how the other person can come to know us better. So what do you do? Introductions. I am so and so, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And this is the stage where there is maximum feedback, maximum redefinition of rules. Just lay it out in the open. We are constantly tapping, not redefinition, but maximum definition of rules. We establish some ground rules for our communication. Okay, it allows us to maintain a sense of community with our fellow human beings. I'm sending out signals, you're responding to me. We are moving towards establishing a relationship. We are not there yet. We are just finding out whether there is enough meat in the conversation, in the interaction, to establish a relationship. Again, please look at this philosophically. Please look at this conceptually, and then see how you can apply it to your personal and, more importantly, professional situations. Okay, the third stage is intensifying. It is marked by friendship and comfortable collegiality. We become friends, we start talking a lot more with each other, we start understanding each other, we feel we are on the same platform. So there's more common ground, there's more sharing, there's better mutual understanding, and the communication rules are redefined because we are both the parties involved in the interaction are committed to building the relationship. So we redefine the rules. This is what I feel comfortable with, this is what I don't feel comfortable with, and we sort of move on from there. There is better, I'm not saying absolute, but slightly better prediction of each other's behavior. The functions of this stage are that it is forms a basis for collaboration and teamwork. I start becoming we. We are not there yet, but two I's are sort of realizing that there is a possibility of we in the future. There's alignment of comfort zones that results in a more comfortable communication climate in the workplace, leading to reduction in friction or conflict. So this is where everybody is happy. This is the honeymoon phase, if you must call it. This is the place where this is the stage where everything is rosy and everything is great. Okay. The next stage here is integrating, which is unification. This is the stage at which the fusion of I into we begins. You haven't declared it yet, but both of you feel committed to each other enough to start thinking about yourselves as we. It could be the formation of professional friendships. It could be the informal discussion about the formation of a team. If given a chance, I would like to have A, B, and C in my team. So that is the integrating phase. I know my priorities. I've made my selections from the pool of people available. Given a chance, these are the people I would like to have in my team. Let's see what happens. The functions of this stage are the first one is perception by both members as a team. I like you, you like me. We will gel well together. Let us start looking for opportunities to build this collaborative atmosphere. The second function here is perceived inclusion into each other's professional circles. So if there is a meeting, if there's an opportunity, I hope and believe that you will tell me about it and I will reciprocate the favor. Synchronous professional behaviors, again, I will watch your back and you watch mine when we are in a vulnerable situation. If we are sitting in a meeting, let's ensure that we don't point fingers at each other. We will sort of be on the same side of the table if a discussion or a debate comes up. So that is the integrating thing. This is the stage at which people start noticing that you are getting closer. or you're on the same side of the table. The next stage is bonding. Bonding is the announcement of commitment to each other's environments, and the example of this is mergers or contracts. This is where, or formalization of teams. And in this stage, we have the team is formally made, it's written down on paper, everything is formalized, everything is sort of announced, everybody knows that what they thought was happening is actually happening. So there's enhanced codependence. Excuse me. Okay. There's a possibility of communication rules being redefined, leading to an increase in the strain on relationship. So now the function is we is formalized, indicating mutual professional commitments. You're both tied. Till the integrating stage, there was a way out. Yes, we are together, but we have our own individual lives, and let's see. We're still talking about it. Now we are stuck to each other. We've decided to write a paper together. We've sent in a paper. The abstract has been accepted. We actually have to sit and write it now. We actually have to decide who will go for the conference and who will not. We have to decide which one of us will be taking the lead, or which one of us will be the first author in writing the white paper in the organization. We have to do it. No way out. We've decided to merge the companies together. So we have to bring people to the table, or we have initiated a contract, we've taken the advance, so both parties have something at stake. Many times there are legal issues involved, and this is where the strain begins. Differentiating. Because of the strain that is imposed on the relationship, the we starts breaking up into an I and I. This is the stage at which the we sort of starts moving apart. It's getting too much. There is just too much involvement. There is just too much going on between the two of us. So let's split up. Or you don't decide to split up, but you start feeling the need for your own personal space in the organization, in the relationship. There's emphasis on both, on the team, that the great team that both are in, but also there is this need starts cropping up to define yourselves outside of the team. What is my contribution? Yes, we both are working together, we have our commitments, we are doing things together, but where does all this end? Where do I get some time to breathe? Or people know me as part of this organization. What is my identity outside of this team? So that is where the differentiating begins, because of the stresses placed. The comfort zones start growing away from each other. The communication rules are redefined yet again, primarily due to the redefinition of satisfaction of either party with the existing rules. Before this, everything was hunky-dory. Everybody was happy. I am comfortable with what you do and say. You are comfortable with what I do and say. But at this stage, what happens is we start redefining things. We are like, okay, I've had it. It's just too much. So I need some space. I would like to have some flexibility with these rules, and it should be okay with you, and I'll reciprocate the favor. So the level of satisfaction is redefined. The function is that it signals uncoupling or trouble in the relationship. When you start talking outside the team, when you start discussing things outside the team, yes, I'm part of the team, but this is what I can do in addition to what the team is doing. That's when the trouble starts coming up. Okay, the next stage is circumscribing. You've started growing apart. You've realized that the connection cannot be as strong as you thought it might be. Only safe communication starts occurring, which means that there is a decrease in the quality and quantity of communication. We realize that we are beginning to irritate each other with what we are saying, with how much we are saying. So we start reducing that, because there's the amount of negative feedback from the other interactant starts increasing. And that is when we start reducing the quality and the quantity of communication. Dissatisfaction with communication rules is redefined yet again. and the satisfaction of communication rules is that rule is redefined, and then the dissatisfaction increases, and we both starts feeling both the parties start feeling that we are not satisfied with the rules, but we don't talk about it. We've acknowledged that there is a problem. It starts surfacing every time we are talking to each other. Acceptance by both parties that the end may be near. The end is not near yet, but when we start reducing the quantity of communication, we start realizing that the end may be near. Communication with each other becomes exhausting, draining. You start feeling the pressure. You don't like your boss. Boss calls for a meeting. Every meeting there's negative environment. The minute an announcement for a meeting comes up, you start having a headache. Come out of the meeting and you need a smoke, you need a cup of tea, you need to gossip with your friends about it, you need to call up your parents. It becomes, you go home and you need to take a nap before you can do anything with concentration after this interaction. So the communication becomes emotionally and physically draining. Relationship becomes painful at this stage because of a perceived necessity to keep up pretenses. At this stage, we don't want to let our peers know, we don't want to let the significant others in the environment know that there is a problem with the communication. We don't want people around us to see that we are both, the team is breaking up, the team is disintegrating. So we try and keep up pretenses, we try and talk to people, we try and in front of others, we are the perfect couple, if I may say so. In the professional environment, we are the best of friends, we are still the best, we still have the best superior-subordinate relationship, but in our heart of hearts, both the parties know that this is not going anywhere, the end is probably near. The function of this stage is that this stage is usually the tipping point. Depending on the level of involvement of either party in the relationship, depending on the stakes each party has in the relationship, depending on what each party stands to lose if the relationship ends, depending on the level of emotional involvement at times in the relationship, the parties can either choose to discuss things and repair the relationship or end it, because completely it depends on the intensity of exhaustion and pain they are experiencing, and then they do a cost-benefit analysis, and then they see whether it's really worthwhile to spend time and effort in repairing the relationship or not. And this is where it actually starts, one actually decides. So, okay, the next stage is stagnating. This is the acceptance of the end. Communication comes to a standstill. The discomfort of each of the parties becomes visible to people in the environment. The pain and exhaustion are much lesser, if not completely over. If we have decided to end the relationship, you're like, okay, I'm done, I've had enough pain, I know I can't change the situation, the other person knows that they can't change the situation, it's all ending, so let's just leave it there. The function is, it marks the time to start looking for a new relationship. Cut your losses and move on. So even though you don't announce it, it starts becoming obvious to you. You start taking steps to move on. The pain is gone. You've accepted what is there. Start looking for newer avenues. Start looking for other teams to be involved in. Start looking for other opportunities at work. Maybe start looking for a new job without telling anyone. This stage also marks a spring cleaning phase of the decaying relationship. Just as you spring clean your homes around Diwali or at Christmas or at New Year or at the end of the academic year, which is what we teachers and professors do. Session ends in March. What do? We spend a week cleaning out our offices, compiling records, filing away everything, archiving things, just before we go off for our break or just before we begin a new semester or a new academic session. So it's a spring cleaning. Relationship has ended, it's decaying, you're filing things, you're making a list of things you you're making a list of things you stand to gain from this relationship. This is the time when you're You're like, okay, this is the time to squeeze out the maximum benefit from whatever is left, cut losses, and figuring out ways to move on, but you haven't announced it yet. This is the stagnating phase, but it's sort of dead in your heart. The next stage is avoiding. The disconnect becomes obvious to significant others. It is very, very pronounced. Unpleasantness creeps in. We start being nasty to each other. We start feeling negative towards each other. Till the previous stage, we know that the relationship is ending. If the relationship doesn't end, or the costs of maintaining the relationship rise for whatever reason, the discomfort with the situation leads to a lot of unpleasantness, and active attempts to avoid interacting with each other begin. Person is coming from the front, we take the other route. I get a call from the person on my cell phone, I put the person on the ignore list. Person tries to talk to me and I say, please send me an email. And let's put this on record. So there are active attempts to avoid interacting with each other. We stop wishing each other, we stop looking at each other, and this is the stage where everybody starts noticing, oh my God, there is a major problem. What happened? These two were the best buddies. What happened? These two organizations were doing so well with each other. So the cost of maintaining that pretense becomes very high. Forced interaction at this stage, for whatever reason, two colleagues who are not getting along with each other, who are part of the same team, are forced to sit in a meeting. Boss tries to help repair the relationship. Bad idea. I'm sorry, but it's really a bad idea. You force these two people to sit across the table and work out their differences. They start shouting at each other. It's too late. Maybe the intervention has come in too late. Maybe you could have stepped in earlier and dealt with it. What happens is, at this stage, when they've already gone through the pain, they've already spring cleaned their decayed relationship or the remnants of their decayed relationship, at that stage, when they are both convinced that the relationship is over, if they are forced to sit across the table, it leads to aggression against each other that is usually expressed in public as a defense mechanism to warn each other and the people around them to not force this interaction ever again. If you put me in the same room as this colleague, we'll just end up shouting at each other. If you ask us to work together on a project, there will be ego clashes. If you ask us to advise the same student on the same committee, either this person will not show up or I will not show up. Or this poor student will have to run from pillar to post because we are both not agreeing on anything. So the aggression becomes more pronounced. And so that lets people know that, this is the point where nobody can do anything. The function of the stage is active and expressed conflict. We'll discuss more about the positive and negative effects of conflict. But at this point, all I can say is that avoiding is a stage that should be avoided at all costs, because this usually serves to create a basis for the termination of the relationship. So it's conflict, it's the end, the relationship has ended. Because of the negativity associated with it, it should be avoided. And if it's not avoided, if it's so pronounced, it gives a chance to the people involved in this relationship to sort of start getting the legal procedures together, start putting things down on paper. You start leaving a trail of clues that can be added and sort of used to legally terminate the relationship. Okay, and then the last stage of the relationship, of any relationship, is really the termination, as the name suggests. It is the end. It could be pleasant or unpleasant, it could be cordial or bitter, it could be short or long drawn. It just depends on how the relationship has progressed. And taking you back to these slides, it has been seen that a relationship can be repaired up to the circumscribing stage. So if you really think that the relationship is worth anything, please start recognizing the signs over here. Make sure that the bonding is not too tight. Make sure that the signs that you become sensitive to the signs of the relationship, to what is going on in the relationship at the differentiating stage here, which is where people start talking about their individuality, give due credit, make it worthwhile for the people to be bonded to each other, so that the relationship sort of goes back from here. Many relationships stabilize. Many relationships stabilize at the experimenting stage, which is where we say we have acquaintances. So with many people you have a hello, hi kind of conversation. Many relationships stabilize at the intensifying stage. We are good friends, but let's keep our work and personal lives separate. Integrating, yes, every time we have a team, let's form a team, but let there be no professional commitments. I will help you as and when I can. You help me as and when you can. We'll be good friends, we'll understand each other, but let there be no professional commitments, because familiarity breeds contempt, and that is what bonding is all about. Familiarity is breeding contempt here, that is leading to differentiation, and that is leading to circumscribing. If a senior person in the department, if a human resources manager really wants to repair any relationship, this is the stage at which it should be done. After this, if you try and intervene at the avoiding or stagnating stage, then the avoiding should be up here. These two are, the stagnating should be down below and avoiding should be up here. I'm sorry for the mess up. Avoiding is the last stage. Anyway, so that is what really happens when the relationship starts stagnating. Then there is really no point. But you can save the relationship till the circumscribing point, or maybe even stagnating stage. Really, it's really not worth it. Avoiding will definitely lead to termination. All right, and the function of termination of any relationship is to wind up, to close the file, to archive things, to make a list of the lessons learned from these relationships, and to move on. And that is pretty much what termination serves to do. It's the end, you're moving on, you're taking the lessons, it's adding whatever has happened in these past stages is going to influence how you deal with your relationships in future also. So that is what this whole cycle of relationships is all about. Okay, theoretical explanations, boring stuff. This is going to continue in the next class as well. So I'm going to do whatever I can till the time is up, and then we will continue in the next session. All right. First theory I'd like to talk about here is the social exchange theory. It presumes that people communicate by trying to achieve relational profit. Profit means what you stand to gain by producing more rewards, outcomes desired by communicators, than the costs one incurs in the communication. So what the costs are, what the communicators must forego in order to achieve goals. Social exchange theory also states that the content, the quantity and quality of communication depends on an expectation of reciprocity in maintaining relationships. And what is reciprocity? I scratch your back and you scratch mine. Social exchange theory proposes that the quality of our relationship, how we establish relationship, what stage we are at in the relationship, depends a lot on the reciprocity. It also assumes that people evaluate potential relationships for their exchange potential by employing comparison levels, which are the inner standards set by the individual that indicate an acceptable level of satisfaction in a relationship or a situation on the basis of various forms of social judgment or past experience. What does this mean? I decide how satisfied I am in a relationship or a situation based on the social judgments on past experiences I've had in similar situations. Should I be expecting this? Should I not be expecting this from this particular relationship? I go to a new school. Everybody is in uniform. There's one tailor who stitches uniforms the exact same way. There is one shop that sells the cloth. I don't know how many schools still do that, but when we were in school, we were not permitted to get the cloth for our uniforms from any other shop except this one, just to maintain uniformity in the school. We were told that we could either wear the sweaters that were sold by this shop or plain hand knitted sweaters. Plain meant plain, absolutely no designs, and that was to give the chance to people who were not so well off to sort of manage on their own. The wool had to be bought from this one particular shop. That was the universal color. Everybody wearing hand knitted sweaters had the same color of wool, nothing fancy. We could not wear different types of shoes. The shoes had to be bought from one particular shop. Of course, we had one Bata and one whatever. So we had to go to this, only this one shop carried the design of boots. We could not carry fancy pencil boxes. And these days, I mean, people, of course, in a work environment is different. So what happens is, when we say comparison levels, my satisfaction in the school, my satisfaction with interaction with others in the school revolved around what people told me about their backgrounds, and discussions of such type were absolutely prohibited. But people did bring out certain things. My mom gives me this when I go home. Yes, I'm wearing a uniform similar to yours, but when I go home, this is the kind of car my dad drives, and this is these are the things that my mom does for my birthday, and all of those things. Now, when you move on to college, the definitions change. More flexibility with what you wear, what you talk about, what you discuss, what you refer to. Even that depends on your socio-economic status. So in school, we had the same books, everybody was studying the same books, everything was uniform. You go to college, some people can afford to buy more books, some people buy second-hand books, some people use hand-me-down notes, some people can afford to get more things photocopied. So your expectations, we don't expect the same level of uniformity. You go to work, the differences, socio-economic differences are highlighted. You go to work, the languages people speak are different. Up to college, up to the lower levels of college, there could be some insistence on communication in a particular language. People are constantly telling you to act professional, to behave professional. There's some uniformity in the classroom. When you go to work, no uniformity. In fact, your differences serve as benchmarks for your progress. So based on your past experience, based on which school you went to, what you learned, what kinds of books you referred to, what language you speak, what accent you use in which language you speak, determines how high you rise. Again, results. But how are those results decided? How is your ability to produce those results decided? A person who studied English, and I'm sorry if I'm bringing this up, but maybe politically incorrect, but this is very, very important. A person who had the opportunity to start learning English in starting from nursery onwards, and had the opportunity to go to good private and public schools and convent schools, would have a better grasp on English and would have a better chance at forming a better first impression on the clients one deals with, as opposed to the person who, especially international clients, as opposed to a person who did not have the opportunity to go to a school where speaking in English, where writing grammatically correct English was emphasized upon. It's not the person's fault. It's not the parents' fault. It depends on what they could afford, where they were living, what opportunities their jobs offered them. Army officers, high socioeconomic status, but still they live in different places, and the quality of education their children are exposed to is so diverse. And again, the confidence depends on that and how people deal with it. Again, that is one area. Other people, social workers or people working in the interior regions, do not have access to such services. So I'm not saying speaking in English is good or bad. All I'm saying is that it has become such a necessity in the international business environment that all these things will determine the differences that you have with each other will determine how high you rise in your professional environments. And going back to the comparison levels, this is what I was talking about. So let's go back to the slide and see. We have these inner standards set by based on our past experiences. So this is what we mean when we say we get a culture shock in the environment. You come from a school where the uniform was stressed upon, everybody was doing the exact same thing, very strict discipline. You go to a college, people are doing different things. Teachers are not so strict, and suddenly you get this big shock and you're sort of jolted into reality. Even then, good college, the overall discipline is emphasized. You move on, move to a job where your differences decide how high you rise. So suddenly you are pushed into a very different kind of environment, and you get this big shock. You're jolted into reality, and you're like, everything I learned about uniformity, everything I learned about professionalism, it suddenly doesn't exist. We draw these comparisons with our past experiences. The next basis for evaluation of potential relationships is the comparison level for alternatives. And this means this is the comparison of the rewards and costs of your existing relationship with the anticipated rewards and costs that you would receive if you ended the relationship. So you compare things, and we'll talk more about this when we discuss negotiations. But in addition to comparing the levels based on our past experiences, we start comparing the levels for alternatives also. What happens if I don't fit in? What will happen? How much will I stand to lose? How much will I stand to gain? This is the social exchange theory, and this is how we form our relationships. This is how we decide whether to form our relationship with somebody else. This is how we decide whether to move forward in the relationship or not. What do I stand to gain if I take this relationship to the next level? We will pause here because we are running out of time. I don't think I have time to discuss. Maybe we'll talk about American pragmatism, and then we'll sort of take a break there. American pragmatism is the social contact that helps us define our individuality and yet keeps us influenced by others. Now, according to this theory, this was proposed by John Dewey in 1927 and refined in 1937. It's been quoted in a book by Ross and Anderson, published in 2002. According to this theory, I exist because I'm a part of the environment, and my individual differences are highlighted. My uniqueness is unique because of this comparison with the significant others in my environment. I can't be considered unique if I come with a set of characters, and how will people know that I'm unique? Only when they see the differences that I bring to the table as compared to the other people in the environment. So the uniqueness comes up. But still, because these differences are coming up, I stay connected to the environment. These differences come up, they surface as differences only because of my connection with the environment. So I'm unique, I'm still a part of the environment, and that ultimately defines how we treat these differences, how we treat this uniqueness, how we treat our relationship with our environment, ultimately defines how we establish our relationships, where we draw the line between forming a relationship and ending it. Where we draw the line, how we define our communication rules will be determined by how much a part we think we are of our environments. Okay, the next theory is FIRO, or Fundamental Interpersonal Relations Orientation Theory, that was proposed by Schutz in 1966, has been mentioned in Ross and Anderson. It identifies the following as significant factors affecting the formation of relationships. This is what we just talked about. The first thing is inclusion, remaining connected with others. How connected do I think I want to remain with others in the environment? Control, ability and desire to make a difference in social situations, not necessarily manipulative, but how much am I contributing? And how much autonomy do I have over that contribution? Machiavellianism is the interpersonal willingness to manipulate others for personal gain. This is a form of control that ultimately decides the shape that our relationships may take. And affection is the interpersonal warmth and satisfying relations. This theory will take some time, so I will just breeze through to the last slide at this point. We will discuss the rest of the theories in the next class. For now, I would like you to revise each of the theories discussed today, just 2 or 3. Social exchange theory, pragmatism, and the Fero theory, and look for examples in your daily lives that will help you understand these theories. I also want you to divide your class into diverse groups, for example, urban and rural, state-wise, or business and service backgrounds, and discuss the implications of each of these 3 theories on your individual preferences for the formation of interpersonal relationships in a professional background, in a professional environment, based on your own background, and the reasons for these preferences. Another thing that I have not mentioned on this slide is I would like you to think about the different stages of relationships that we talked about. I'd hoped to cover much more, but I think I got wrapped up in explaining things, so I wasn't able to. So I'll give you one more task. I would like you to discuss amongst yourselves what, and of course think back and decide where you think or how you form your interpersonal relationships, how you define each stage of relationship, what functions does each of these stages serve in your personal and professional relationships in light of your cultural similarities and differences. What happens to each of these stages when you are interacting with a person from a similar culture and background vis-a-vis when you're interacting with a person from a different culture or background. And we'll stop here and we'll continue in the next class. Thank you.